Greetings, fellow trekkers and trekkers, and happy Star Trek Day, everybody! Star Trek in Deep Space Nine Season 6 now continues on with Valiant. It's a hectic day in the bar, as Quark is grousing about the backup in his drink orders because of a drink replicator malfunction. He says his mate's request has been put off by an overworked Chief O'Brien, who has promised to Rum, who in turn promised to Nog. As Quark complains, Jesse Tax arrives offering to repair his replicator. This way, the Nog was given the chance to go to Ferenginar, and she's doing this to repay a favor to him. Quark says that such a job is beneath her, and Odo, listening, Riley observes that the Ferengi have some tender feelings for the Trill, and teases and must irritate him that she's married. Quark tells Odo that that's the most ridiculous thing he has said this past year, and tells him to leave since he's not ordering anything. After Odo leaves, Quark sits longingly at Dax while her back is turned to him. Meanwhile, Nog and Jack are departing Starbase's 257 and learn about USS Shenandoah to travel to Ferenginar to deliver an official message from the Federation Council to Grand Nagus Zek. Even Nog would say anything about its contents. Jake suspects something big, maybe even an alliance. Nog is put out when he discovers that Jake told the editor of the Federation News Service that he could get an exclusive interview with Zek despite promising he wasn't coming on the trip as a reporter, and tells Jake that he won't even be getting anywhere near the Grand Nagus. Their decision is cut short when they encounter a wing of 6 Jem'Hadar fighters on their way to attack the base. Even though they weren't the original objective, one fighter breaks formation comes after them. Nog makes his emergency warp jump, despite Jake's warnings that their course is taking them further into Cardassian territory. When Nog draws impulse to engage the Jem'Hadar ship in real space, the Ronin takes a heavy beating from his weapons. But they were actually saved by the arrival of another ship they first believed to be the USS Defiant, but which turns out to be a different Defiant-class ship, the USS Valiant. When the ship engages an enemy fighter, the two friends are beamed aboard and are surprised to be greeted by Acting Chief Petty Officer Dorian Collins, a young woman in a cadet uniform but wearing a chief's rank insignia. Escorted to the bridge, they see the entire crew is composed of cadets. Nog recognizes them as Red Squad, the elite cadet cadre within Starfleet Academy, who so firmly wanted to join 2 years earlier. After the fighter is taken out, they meet Captain Tim Waters, the ship's CO, who explains that he was given a battlefield commission by the previous Captain Ramirez, and he has used that authority to promote other cadets as needed to fill vacant positions. Waters orders Chief Collins to take Jake to sickbay to see some minor burns he has suffered. When the ship's first officer, Commander Karen Ferris, reports that the warp drive is still functioning below warp 3.2, Nog volunteers a suggestion, and Waters is happy to accept the advice of a trained engineer. With Jake in sickbay and Nog in Captain Waters' ready room, Chief Collins and Waters explain their unique situation to Jake while treating him in the ship's sickbay. The Valiant departed on a shakedown cruise 8 months ago, crewed by 7 brigade officers and 35 cadets, on a 3-month training mission to circumnavigate the entire Federation before returning home. Although such cruises are standard for senior cadets, Jake notes that it is unusual for them to be entrusted with a state-of-the-art warship, or for such a large group of cadets to be given a mission of such complexity. Collins proudly explains that they are Red Squad and considered anything but usual. In the Valiant's ready room, Waters explains that the ship was transitioning through the Kepler sector when the war broke out and a Dominion invasion force swept through the sector on the first day, so they were caught behind enemy lines. They were attempting to return to Federation space when they encountered a Cardassian battlecruiser near Eel-Gatark, and within the first 15 minutes of ensuing battle, both ships lost main power and becoming adrift, and all the Valiant senior officers were killed or critically wounded, including Captain Ramirez. Despite having a punctured lung and massive internal injuries, Ramirez refused to go to sick bay and instead stayed on the bridge to direct the entire damage control effort, and the cadets were able to get the Valiant systems back online in 3 hours and destroy the Cardassian ship. Just before he died the next day, Ramirez gave Waters command of the ship. Nog is awestruck at the tale and how Red Squad has spent 8 months behind enemy lines, and Waters offers him a post as Chief Engineering Officer. Nog is still hesitant to take on such responsibility. Waters tells him that the undermanned ship needs him. Nog accepts and is given a Red Squad pin for his collar. Waters explains that with Nog's help, they can fix their warp drive problems and get on with their mission. When the war broke out, Starfleet Command, on whether the command of the ship had been passed to a cadet. Transmitting orders to the Valiant to collect technical data on a new Dominion battleship being deployed in their sector. Since it were to maintain radio silence, the ship had cut off from the rest of Starfleet since the outbreak of the war. The Valiant keeps intercepting the battleship's comm traffic, so no one is operating close by, but the damaged warp core prevents them from getting close enough to scan it. Undaunted, the young captain is determined to carry on the Valiant's mission or die trying. Chief Collins takes Jake to the mess hall, where he draws a few more stairs for the rest of the 33-man crew, being the most civilian on board. They converse amiably. Collins starts to tell him about her home at Chaco City on Luna. And she remarks growing up on Luna, she starts to get emotional and excuses herself saying she's on duty. In engineering, Nog makes some modifications that fare subject are unsafe, but Waters is willing to try anything, and the ship succeeds again to warp 4. Collins is a sick bay looking at a pad and crying a little when Waters comes in and, despite Collins' disapproval, grabs the pills from the cabin and swallows them. He notices she's been crying, and she admits that she's been feeling a little homesick. The next thing Jake knows, he's presented to the reading room for an interrogation by Waters and Ferris. They remind him of the extreme urgency of their mission and say that his presence is upsetting the delicate morale of their shipmates. They dismiss Jake, and Waters tells Ferris to keep a close eye on him. Before she is dismissed, Ferris remarks that Waters spent another double shift on the bridge, and she is concerned that he is not getting enough sleep. Waters assures her that he is fine, before swallowing another handful of pills after she has left. Still smarting, Jake runs into Nog, and is surprised to see that he has now joined the crew, with the brevet rank of lieutenant commander. Nog is stunned when Jake echoes his own earlier doubts about whether he is ready to be chief engineer of a starship. Before they argue further, Radar is set and no hands are ordered to report to battle stations. Jake and Nog run to the bridge. The Valiant has located the objective of its mission. While hovering outside its sensor range, the ship launches Class 3 probe to gather the intelligence needed and shadows the ship for several hours. Between an overzealous crew and an almost inhuman dynamic, the mission finally comes to a successful end. Captain's log, starting 51825.4. We've been charting the Dominion battleship for 3 hours. The data our probe has gathered so far has only been interesting, but it may have given us a golden opportunity to strike a blow upon the Federation. In the mess hall, Waters announces that their mission is a success. They've gathered the required intelligence without being detected, and they're now free to return home to Federation space. But he says that the Jupiter battleship is a direct threat to every Federation outpost and colony in the 50 light years, and that it must be destroyed. And it can. Ferris explains that their scans indicate a major design flaw in the battleship. The primary support braces of its antimatter storage system is composed of deuterium, which is ordinarily resilient, but becomes extremely unstable when exposed to delta radiation. A directive of this specially modified quantum torpedo should be able to cause the entire antimatter storage system to tear itself apart and destroy the entire ship. Nog immediately sees a problem. The modified torpedo will need to have its guidance system open and removed, which means the Valiant will need to fire at extremely close range, approximately 300 meters, and remain there while the torpedo is guided in manually. Captain Waters says it may be dangerous, but it's better than they take the risk and have some other crew, be asked to take it later, and he thinks they can do it, and they should do it. This gets the crew excited, but Jake, having had enough, speaks out and attempts to appeal to the common sense of the crew and convince them to leave the area with the new information. He explains how his father has a well-deserved reputation as one of the best combat officers in the fleet, and even he would attempt this mission with a single ship, even that ship were the Defiant with a full complement of his veteran officers. And if he can't do it, it can't be done. Waters dismisses his objections, saying that the reward outweighs the risk and that they're a Red Squad and they can do anything. The group began cheering and started chanting Red Squad, including Nog, which shocks Jake. Alone in engineering, Jake starts talking sense into Nog while he's modifying the torpedo. Jumping our battleship, they're going up against is twice as large as Galaxy-class starship, with 3 times the armament. Yet Waters wants to try and combat it with a single escort vessel. Nog says that the captain knows what he's doing, so I think Jake would understand if he was an officer and not just a reporter. Angrily, Jake tells Nog about Waters' addiction to core defense stimulants, restrained from talking with Collins despite being ordered to stay away from her. Nog refuses to listen. Jake says the warriors can get them all killed, and Nog orders Jake, "Get out!" Unbeknownst to Jake and Nog, warriors happen to be monitoring the conversation from his ready room, and summons help right as Jake said that Collins told him of Warrior's drug taking. As soon as Jake leaves engineering, he's surrounded by Cadet Shepard and another cadet with phasers and thrown on the brig. The Valiant prepares for its mission. The sick bay crew is drilled, and Collins issues phaser rifles to the security teams in case they have to repel boarders, or perhaps board the vessel themselves. Waters addresses all hands with inspirational speech, warning them to keep their minds on the duty. The ship accelerates to warp 6. When the Gemini warship spots the Valiant and drops out of warp and turns to face them, there's a moment of nervousness as the bridge crew starts to really appreciate what they are up against. Waters remains undaunted and orders the helm to take the ship on a head-to-head attack run at close range to avoid its weapons. The Gemini open fire, and Valiant begins to take damage. The torpedoes are launched, and fires guys onto the battleship's perceived weak spot. The torpedoes score a direct hit, and the bridge crew cheers as their explosion of flame, and the battleship begins to flounder before emerging intact from the fireball. Water says that they missed the target, and Ferris confirms that it's a direct hit. Some of the tactics simply didn't work. As a result of their situation, as the reality of their situation becomes clear, the normally arrogant and overzealous Red Squad was replaced by a group of very frightened youths, trapped deep in space and massively outgunned and at close range by an invulnerable enemy ship 5 times the size of their escort. The battleship returns fire, hammering the Valiant with its own torpedoes. Water starts to order evasive maneuvers when a console explodes, able to capture office support and killing him. The Valiant loses main power, propulsion, weapons, and shields. There starts to be the evasion order before more explosions kill the rest of the bridge crew, except Nog and Collins. Collins asks Nog for orders since he is now ranking officer. See, their phaser banks are still partially functional. After a moment's pause, Nog knows about its outcome is now a foregone conclusion, and there's no point in staying to die. After he triggers the evacuation alert, Nog grabs Collins and leads her off the bridge. In the brig, most of the Korean crew has been killed when Nog and Collins run down to free Jake from the holding cell. When Jake asks what happened, Nog bluntly replies, "We failed." Together, they make their way to the escape pods. Only 4 pods are left of the Valiant. 2 are destroyed by the battleship, and one is caught in an explosion as the Valiant is destroyed. Listening rupturing hold of the Valiant hides from the battleship's view that one pod gets away, carrying Nog, Jake, and Collins. In nearby sector of space, the Divine is searching for Nog and Jake's missing runabout. When Major Kirk picks up the pod's distress signal, identifying it with the Valiant. Word flies that the Valiant officially went missing 8 months ago and may be a Dominion trap. But Cisco says it may be legitimate, and therefore they have to check it out anyway. The pod is rescued, though Cisco informs Jake that no others were found in the area. The intersickly were directed to be sure to treat Collins and Nog's injuries, and Jake goes to comfort a somber Nog. He asks Jake if he plans to write a story about the incident, and Jake says he probably will. Nog asks Jake about what he's going to say, to which Jake asks what he should say. Nog tells Jake to say that the Valiant was a good ship, with a good crew. His only mistake was finally following Captain Waters as he let them over a cliff. From her sickbed, Collins objects, saying that Waters was a great man. Jake reminds Collins that Waters got everyone killed, but Collins insists that if Waters failed the mission, it was because the crew that ultimately failed him. Nog then tells Jake to include both opinions in the story and let people decide for themselves. Not only then Jake Lee taking Collins' hand in stone and giving her his red squad insignia pin, declares to Collins that while Waters might very well be a hero and even a great man, he was a bad captain in the end. Yeah, I can definitely say that. So yeah, that's true. So yeah. Anyway, so let's take a look at some trivia surrounding this episode. Red Squad was introduced in the 4 season 2-parter Homefront / Paradise Lost. where David Drew Gallagher also appeared as Riley Shepard. The new Starfleet cadet uniforms are introduced. The Jomodar was next seen in the Dogs of War, and also featured prominently in the Battle of Cardassia, as seen in the series finale, What You Leave Behind. While Nog was breveted to Lieutenant Commander, he appears to be wearing a Lieutenant Junior grade insignia during his time in the Valiant. The car's computer displays of the Valiant are seen in reverse order, with the main screen on top and the shorter portion in the future. This episode marked the final appearance of James Redbone. This episode marks the final appearance of this runabout USS Shenandoah. In modern naval protocol, Nog, a commissioned officer, would immediately outrank the other crew of the Valiant, all of whom were cadets. However, Redbone has stated that he based the premise on an 18th and 19th century naval tradition that active captain can only be removed from command by a flag officer. In the opening battle sequence before the runabout, several camera moves, in particular the sweep where the camera banks sharply to reflect the motion of the runabout, and really just goes to the fact that the forward window screens have been removed to make filming the scene possible. In the most visible example, a sizable hole can be seen in the center of the piloting console, where the same support struck between the windows usually was. During calls reminisces about going inside a spacesuit to watch the sunrise from the surface of the moon. Writerology Moore will go on to depict such a scene in the season 2 premiere of For All Mankind. Colmiani designed to appear in this episode, although he was mentioned by Quark, Jadzia, Dax, and Nog. Several costume parts in this episode were sold off on the It's a Wrap sale and auction on eBay, including Grace Buster's costume. So, this episode is really giving a knock. This episode is comparable to episodes such as the TNG episode Lower Decks and Voyager episode Good Shepherd, in the way that features an officer in contact with a group of lower-ranking members of Starfleet, and because it depicts an on-screen story that follows both the command-level ranks and shows much of the story from their perspective as it was achieved in Lower Decks. It is worth noting Ronald G. Moore also wrote The First Duty, which focused on Nova Squadron, and therefore this could be a reason for the similarities. This episode also bears a strong resemblance to the 2009 film Star Trek. Both feature a crew that's largely made up of cadets and eventually forced to take command of the ship after their senior staff is killed or captured. Also in both cases, a young, energetic, and arrogant cadet becomes commanding officer in order to show a high-risk mission against an enemy ship. That's much larger for against the Starfleet ship. Of course, in the case of Star Trek, the crew succeeds its mission and returns home safely, and then command does succumb to his own arrogance. Yeah, that's definitely true. So I think this episode is really damn good, and I do kind of feel bad for the Valley crew, so what happened to them, so yeah. So overall, I give Valiant 4 warp cores out of 5. When we tune in a bit, we take a look at the next episode of the day, which is Profit and Lace. Ooh, that should be interesting. So, until then, live long and prosper, everybody.